How's the time?
I just thought I might give a bit of a rundown of the ASPP itself, and then we can go to questions. For a lot of people here, the ASPP will be important, but perhaps not in terms of your direct interaction with it. One thing that I would like to say is the ASPP is an authors program. That means authors can apply directly to us for funding. And you may do so if you wish, but certainly whenever I'm talking particularly to new scholars, people who don't have a lot of experience in scholarly publishing, I always say to them that, you know, it really is worth your while to go to a publishing house first, because if you get a good conscientious editor, and the people on this panel are good conscientious editors, not everybody in the profession is perhaps a good conscientious editor. I'd say most are. And if you get a good conscientious editor, you will get a lot of help with what you are working on, with the result that if it comes onto my desk, it has a much better chance of actually being ready to go in the way that it needs to be in order to get ASPP funding than if perhaps you had done it on your own, simply because editors are people who are very experienced in what the scholarship in the areas that they're dealing with really requires. The ASPP is not a workshop process, so you sort of only get one shot at it. That is, if we decline to fund your book, you cannot resubmit that work to us in its present or in a revised form. That's just not what we're there for. We're really there to be the last stage when everything is polished and ready to go. Now what the ASPP does is that it funds up to 185 titles per year in the humanities and social sciences with a grant of $8,000 per title. That sounds like a lot of money. In fact, it's not. It's a very, very costly endeavor to publish scholarly books. It's a marginal type of thing. This is why, you know, there's not a lot, maybe any money to be made with it. It's not there to be a money-making venture. It's there primarily to help disseminate research. So, as you heard Ryan say, for example, you know, you deal with, what, 120 books a year, and UTP is about 160. Obviously, clearly, we do not fund every scholarly thing in this country. We do not even fund every scholarly thing in humanities and social sciences in this country. We fund some of the things that get published in this country. And what our job is that I send your work to members of my publications committee. You may slot your work into up to 3 disciplines when you're sending it to us, or your editor may do that on your behalf. And because cross-disciplinarity is such a big thing now, it's actually rather rare that I get something that is just in post-Confederation Canadian history. And I always look at that and think, where are the other 2? But sometimes it's just post-Confederation Canadian history. Often, however, it will be post-Confederation Canadian history, Native studies, and sociology, something like that. So I send that to a group of generally 5 scholars who are going to be able to speak or read knowledgeably in those areas, and they will give one of a number of recommendations. Either they will say, greatest things in sliced bread, give this work $8,000. They never actually use the sliced bread. I don't know why sliced bread is all that great. Yes, you know, greatest things in fresh baked bread. There's some bread metaphor anyhow. And they say, great, give it money. They may say, not the greatest things in sliced bread, don't give it any money, decline to fund. They may say, revise and resubmit. Now this is an important thing because when a work is in-house with a publisher, many publishers will quite rightly see that there is as much revision done in-house before we ever get it as possible. And again, that is the way it should work because we're not a workshop process. So usually if you have had something go back internally, you know, let's say you've had it reviewed by a couple of reviewers at the press and you've responded, and then your editor said to you, well, and I don't know if this is all, I imagine this is a call that often an editor makes, but for all I know, perhaps your editorial boards recommend this too. You know, go back and do some work and we'll send it out to these reviewers again. Often when that much work has been done, my committee can see all the work that's been done and they think, yes, this is ready to go. But the thing about doing it that way is that if there is still something that really needs to be done, you still get another chance at the ASPP. So the publications committee can say, this is good, but it still needs some work, so we're going to ask the editor to, you know, send it back to reader A1 or A2, however many there are. and get the author to do some more revisions and to respond to the reports. Now, again, yeah, any of us who've done particularly a thesis, but let's face it, it's going to apply to anything. When you've written a book, there's a certain point when you just don't want to see that thing ever again. So, you know, it's a hard slog, but do keep in mind that peer reviewers aren't recommending revisions because they don't like you. I suppose maybe in the odd case, if they know you don't like you, they might do that. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. Really, the idea is that they're recommending revisions because they do believe that it will make the work stronger. It will allow it to make a more substantial contribution to its area. So that is really the spirit in which to look at these things. When reviewers make suggestions, you are not obliged to do everything that they ask. You are, however, and I think, this is certainly something that I say to people if they are submitting directly to ASPP, and I'm trying to advise an author on how to respond to reviews, but I think I can speak for everyone here. When you are responding to reviews, what's really important is not that you agree with the reviewers on everything, it's that you engage respectfully with them on everything. You can easily tell them, there's no way I'm doing that. But you do it respectfully, and you say, you know, I think perhaps reviewer A1 is looking for a different kind of book, which does happen sometimes. You just get a reviewer who really, really wants something quite different. The other recommendation that can be made is that it goes to adjudication. What adjudication means is that the committee believes it's a good book. It's not the highest ranked that they have seen in that area recently. And they would like us to fund it if we have sufficient funding. Again, we have a limited resource pot, and we have more demand than we have supply. And this is why it is often hard for authors to realize that if they don't get funding, right off the bat, they'll say, well, gee, I had 2 really good reviews, and I'm sure you did, but almost all the reviews we get are good. Obviously, if an editor gets something and goes, whoa, these are really not good reviews, they're not going to send those on to us in all likelihood, unless perhaps certain cases where it becomes obvious that this just, the author isn't willing to do more. All right, we'll send it through the process, and the answer will be no. My committee sees almost exclusively positive reports. One of these skills, of course, that all editorial board members in any position develop is an ability to, first of all, to read between the lines. They're looking not just for praise, they're looking for something substantial. What does this work actually do for the discipline? They are also doing something that nobody here can do anything about, and that is they're sort of comparing your work with the general standard of works that they have been asked to make recommendations on. So the reason that I'm saying all of this is because again, the ASPP always has more demand than it has supply, and my publications committee members have the very, very hard job of trying to decide just what should be funded. Reviewers really, for the most part, do want to be critical but generous, and my publications committee members certainly really want to be generous. They, especially, not exclusively, but especially with newer scholars. We all know how hard a business this is. So, at all events, if you do manage to be successful in obtaining funds, then what happens is that your publisher, upon the actual publication of the book, will be given $8,000 to help in the production, the marketing, however you see fit to use that funding, to help with the dissemination of that research.